Welcome to ActivExpressions. This training module will show you how to use ActivExpressions within ActivInspire. So first, let's go over the options of the types of questions you can use with the ActivExpressions. What you see on the page here is an example of the Express Pull wheel. Once you click on the icon in the toolbox, this wheel will appear. And as you hover over something, additional menus pop out. So as you can see, you can answer a multiple choice question, and you can have options A through F. You can have one response required, up to 6. You can have sort and order, again with the same letters. You can do yes, no, true or false, or I don't know. You can do a Likert scale, number questions, and text questions. This also includes math equations. So let's take a look at how these look on an actual ActivExpression device when they are active. So now let's look at how you would display questions for students to answer with the ActivExpressions. The first option is simply writing it on the board with a pen. So here I've just written a basic question and I gave them 3 options. I labeled A, B, and C for them. So if I was to go to an Express poll and pull up the multiple choice options A through C, I would also give them just one option to answer. So I would choose multiple choice, A through C, choose one response. I also could get crafty and type it so it's all nice and easy to read. I can also pre-build a layout that makes it very fancy looking. If I open my resource browser and go to Lesson Building Tools, there are some pre-made templates in here that I could drag over. So here are some question layouts. So since my question was only 3 options, I could drag that option over here. So if I dragged that question layout over, I could insert text on top of it and make a pretty clean question layout. I could also choose a different layout and use resource images from the resource library and make my question even more jazzy. So now let's look at making a self-paced quiz. This is different from the Express poll where you're just asking questions on the fly, and there's a little bit more work involved to prepare the quiz. But you can use it over and over once you have created it. So in this example, we're going to make a silent reading quiz that students would use the clickers along with reading a book, in this case Cat in the Hat, to do at their own pace. And so you can see that the self-paced quiz is actually just one slide, and you don't see any questions on this slide. That's because the questions are built in to the question manager, which I'll show you in a second. When you push play, this quiz will be sent to the clickers, and that's the only place that you will see the questions. If you go to Insert Questions, or hit Control-Q on the keyboard, so this view takes you to the question manager. Now I already have put in the questions and set the answers and the parameters for this quiz, but I'll walk you through what these actually do. So in the question box, if you double click on it, you can type the question as you want it to appear on the clicker to the student. And you can simply erase the type here to add a new question. You can also click the green plus button that's up at the top left-hand corner. Another feature is that you can rearrange the questions. So if you type them in as you think of them, you can also rearrange them to fit the order you want later. If you double click on question type, you get the options that we've reviewed earlier. So you can have multiple question types within the same quiz. Now level is an optional setting that you can choose to do, but you may not need it at all. What it does is you can color code each question. And as you do so, it will rearrange the questions to group them by the same color. So everything that is level 1 will appear first in the quiz order, and everything that is level 5 and 9 will come later in the order. It's totally optional and it's not necessarily needed. It's just demonstrated here to know that it is a feature. When you click on options, what you're putting in depends on what the question format you laid out. So for example, multiple choice, you're going to get multiple boxes to put answers in. And you'll need to choose which one is the correct answer. So normally you have 6 options when you start because we have A through F. You can always delete one of those options to narrow your limits by clicking the X button over here. For secondary teachers, you can also click the pi button and enter an equation if that is one of your answers. The other thing you need to choose is how many answers are correct. You can have all of them right or just a few of them, but you need to set how many they need to answer. By default, it'll be set to 1, but if I wanted 2 answers, I would scroll this up to 2 or 3 or so on. And I need to make sure that the assigned correct answer box is checked so that ActivInspire knows there is a correct answer. If I click on a yes or no question, my layout over here changes. So instead of this time I can have yes or no, I need to check which one is the correct answer. I also have the option to include I don't know as an answer. Once you have at least 2 or more questions in this question manager, it becomes a self-paced test, and some further options open for you. For example, test properties. This is the only thing that will show on the slide when you open this flip chart. The title appears in the first box, and then below it is whatever you want it to say. Typically, it's directions for the test. You can choose to set a time limit. If you want it to be a short test, you can make it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or if you want it to be as long as they need, you can set it for something that is very long, such as 2 hours or 3 hours, because you can always stop the test at any time. This is also helpful when you have a test going when students come into the room in the morning and they pick up an active expression to get started, but you don't want it to time out because they're coming in and starting at different times. That instance, you could set it for 2 hours so you know that they will be done because they have to be done when you're ready to start class. Now the next 2 options are totally up to you. You can allow students to answer the questions out of order, which means they can navigate the question set. So they could go to start on 4 first, jump to 9, go back to 1 and do 2 and 3. In this case, I'm going to undo that because this is silent reading, so they need to read the story in order to answer the questions in order. I also undid the retry answers. So you could set this up for have students to retry an answer until they get it correct. You can also choose to tell the students if they're correct as they're going along on the test. So this is very helpful for students because they get instant feedback. You can choose to tell them when they're correct, only when they're incorrect, and how you say it through the clicker. If you check the Send Summary box, this will send back to the students what order they are of finishing the test out of the whole class. This may or not be helpful when you're doing a normal self-paced test, but it could be helpful for things like a scavenger hunt. On the page properties, if you check the box Replace the page content with a new design, you get options of what the screen is going to look like. So you can choose colors. After you've set up how you would like your quiz to appear, you must click Apply. This actually applies any changes that you made to this actual slide. Then you need to click Done to exit the Question Manager view. So now that I hit Applied and Done, I go back to my screen. So what I typed as the title was Cat in a Hat, as you saw in the Question Manager, and the steps that I wrote appear here. It's simply putting a text on your slide. It also automatically created the banner across the top that is blue, the black banner across the bottom with the gradient with the play button, and the nice turquoise ring around the edge. The only thing that I added was a picture of Cat in the Hat. I just inserted an image, which is a JPEG of Cat in the Hat. So once I push play at the bottom, the first question will go to the ActivExpressions once the ActivExpression is turned on, and the 20-minute window will start counting down. So now let's do a self-paced quiz and look at the data as it happens. So let's look at the data of this test. So if I open the window over here on the right, I can see a textual data of what happened during the quiz. So for Corey, I can see that she finished level 9 and got 7 answers correct and 3 incorrect, and the average response time. Then I can see what the answer was for question 1 and what this clicker answered, and how long it took to answer. Or I can look at the visual graph with the colors and see it that way. Now where the X is on the box means that answer was incorrect, and as I scroll across to the right, it was counting how many seconds it was taking. So the spaces between the bars are the time between the student finished answering the question and needed to click clear on the active expression to go to the next question. So long pauses in between questions means the student was not actively engaged. It also means the long colored bars mean the student looked at the question for a longer period, so they might have been stumped on the question. Very, very short boxes indicate the student didn't fully read the question and was just clicking through to the answers. And up at the top right corner, we can select a student to see different data. So let's click on Rocco. This student got the same number of answers correct and incorrect, but their average response time was just a little bit shorter. In the top left corner, you can see how much time was left in the test in the pre-built time. This test happened to have 20 minutes built in, and so we were down to 15 minutes and 51 seconds remaining. If I change the view to incorrect answers, I can see which ones each student got wrong, and these are in question order. So the very first question, Corey got it wrong. On the second question, all 3 students got it wrong. The orange question, because it was level 3, 2 students got it wrong. And the 6th question, which is purple, all 3 students got it wrong. So this is helpful to find out whether a question was maybe worded wrong and led students to choose the wrong answer. Level summaries will show you how long each student took on that level of that question and whether they got it right or wrong. So if you set up your harder questions toward the end, students are likely to take longer time to do so, to answer them correctly. So you could set up your hard questions at the beginning of the test where they have more time. So all your harder questions could be labeled level 1, and they descend into easier questions toward the end where students have less time if you have a time limit on your test. So after a test, you can get the results and you can save them to go back later to enter into Skyward or to review the results with the class. Once you close the results window, you can retrieve the results if you have not already closed the flip chart yet by opening your page browser and clicking on the active expression icon. When you click the results browser, it will pop up with the votes that you've done by date and time. Choose the one you want and you can double click it to open that results window with the visual representation again, or you can export it into an Excel file to save. Choose the one you want and hit export. Choose where you want to save the Excel file and the name that you want to save it as. I'm going to save this as Cat Quiz. So the beginning tab in Excel is a summary quiz of this instance. So we want to look at the data that happened today during the quiz with the 3 students. We can see that Corey, Riley, and Rocco each got 70%, and we can see the green answers that they got correct and the red answers that they got wrong. To dig deeper into the data, we can click on the Question tab and see each student's response to that question. So if there were lots of red answers to that question, perhaps that question was more difficult. If we click on the Student tab, we can see a student's individual results altogether. So for this time, we can see that student 1 or student 20 or 21, what they got right versus red versus green. And the question page is simply a summary of the quiz, what each question said and what the options were. So you can save your Excel files and use them to put them in Skyward how you want. You can also keep them as database so you can show students how they progress, especially if you did a pre-test and a post-test.